Okay, our next speaker, Corbb O'Connor, is currently the president of the National Federation of the Blind of Minnesota. He thinks like an economist, writes like a journalist, scrutinizes new features of social media like an advertiser, and tries his best to raise his 7-year-old like an Adlerian. Did I say that correctly? Adlerian. I was practicing Adlerian. A hands-down nerd, Corbb taught himself HTML, CSS, PHP, and MySQL alongside Adobe Photoshop so he could build a resource for webmasters in 1998. JustForWebmasters.com died a long time ago, but he's still building. He started B2B communications firm by mistake, kicked off U.S. Bank's accessibility initiative. Funny how we can do that some places. Let's see, mentored salespeople into certified accessibility testers, and now leads at accessibility advocacy for level access. He was appointed by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to chair a statewide council that oversees the work of state services for the blind, of which he has twice been elected its chairman. A Chicago native, recovering journalist, amateur radio operator, and occasional cowboy, Corbb has a question for any occasion. Welcome.
Thank you very much. You know, I want to start with something a little bit different than what you may be thinking we're going to talk through today. So I am indeed the president of the National Federation of the Blind, and today I call myself a blind person. Well, growing up, I was a user of large print. And what I found my parents and I did as we were going through the school system was that we always had to be planning 5 years ahead. So going into first grade, we were thinking already about what is it going to be like to have textbooks, and a lot of them, and they'll be heavy and big, and they need to be custom ordered. We were thinking about things like, how's it going to be to travel independently on the train or the bus? And then when I was entering 6th grade, we were talking about high school. In high school, we were talking about college. College, we were talking about work. And I recognized that for a lot of folks, that's a really scary thought. If we think 5 years down the road, we don't know what our vision is going to be like. We don't know how we're going to be living independently. And we want to be mindful that there are lots of great work going on in the medical community. But at the same time, what we also know is that there's a lot of work going on when it comes to us needing to live our day-to-day lives. And we might be thinking about that medical research not 5 years ahead, but 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road. We all have AI chips in our brain anyway, and we're not even thinking like we are today, right? So we want to be mindful that when we're accessing these local resources, we're thinking not just about what are my needs today, but what are they down the road. So when I was in high school, I started to think about what a high school job might look like. And my dad had taught me that as a blind person, your blindness is not very popular as something people think about a lot. And he said, you're probably going to have to do a lot of explaining. And I went into a job interview at Culver's. Anybody know Culver's, the cheese curds, butter? Okay. I'm from Chicago, so we had to drive a whole 90 minutes to Wisconsin to get good cheese. But what I learned, I went to the Culver's interview, and I thought, okay, I'm a sophomore in high school, I know what I'm doing. And the guy said, you're a blind person, how are you going to work a milkshake machine? Well, actually, I've never made a milkshake in my life, but neither has any of those people either. He's like, you're going to cut your hand off. How are you not going to cut your hand off? I've never seen a milkshake machine, so I'm not even sure how they use it, but I assume all of these people are kind of questionable as to whether they can cut their hands off. I'm sure I learned. And so that framed for me, man, jobs out of the workforce can be scary. Scary from the standpoint of knowing what is it that people are expecting of me, right? What are their expectations of me as a blind person walking in? It's scary from the standpoint of how am I going to do these things? And it's scary from the standpoint of I'm going to be maybe the only blind person working in this field. And so what I learned was that I needed a network of blind people that I could reach out to and say, how do you operate a milkshake machine? How do you work as a cashier? Lisa talked about the Blind Enterprise program. We have blind folks who are running not just vending machines, but entire cafeterias. A friend of mine just took over all military dining at Camp Ripley here in Minnesota. He's a blind person. I have a friend who's doing the same out in Colorado. And she's got not only she's grown her business substantially, she's got multiple cafeterias. I said, how do you work as a cashier? And she showed me her technology that she uses. But more importantly, she said, as a business owner, if I'm working the cash register, there's a bigger problem because it means I'm not running the business. And it's not that she can't run with all kinds of technology, an accessible cash register, looking at currency in different ways. By the way, no one uses paper currency and no one's using the penny anymore. But point being, right, she's using credit card terminals, she's using websites that are made to be accessible. And so having that network of folks in the National Federation of the Blind, we're able to have that conversation. And, only a few percentage of blind folks see nothing. Most people have some kind of light perception. I, myself, could still be using large print today. What I found is that by learning Braille and using Braille, functionally, is easier for me. Because I can be reading my notes while talking with you. I had a job in college working for Marketplace, the public radio show. And I went through that interview, and as I was taught to do by my dad, in the middle of the interview, I said, hey, I know there's all these federal laws that we can't talk about blindness, but straight shoot, what questions do you have? And for the first time, the answer wasn't like you're going to cut your hand off, or you're going to electrocute yourself, or how are you going to do this, or how are you going to get to work, or how are you going to see our customers? But John Dimsdale, the former Washington bureau chief, he said, I had polio as a kid, so I walk with a limp. I don't know how you got here, but you did. You have a resume, looks good. So I figured we'll figure it out together, and you'll tell me what you need, and I'll tell you what I need. Later on that summer, we had to rewire the studio. We had a bunch of new equipment. We were working with the team, if you know Marketplace, they're based in California. And so we did all that work. I was working with the engineers in California, setting everything up. We had between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. between the two broadcasts to get it done. Kind of terrifying. I don't know why you decided a dead microphone to an intern. I think we have, do you have a replacement mic?
Edge did die.
Battery dead. Oh, that's not me. That's not me. Maybe there's rescue on the way. Best friend. I don't know why you assigned that job to an intern, right? To rewire your broadcast studio, but nonetheless they did. And right before there was an interviewee coming in, I said, oh, hold on a second. My guide dog is fighting with the guide dog of our interviewee. 1 second. Right? And I come back, and the engineers are like, hold on. You have a guide dog? You're a blind person?
And I'll let you know.
And so I think what we figured out together in that opportunity, in that time of Marketplace, was that these non-visual skills that I had learned were really helpful. That meeting a lot of people in a variety of jobs, from funeral undertaker, yes, she actually does all of the signs for undertakers, preparing bodies for funerals, all the way to folks who own their own dog grooming businesses, to people who work for the FBI. A buddy of mine actually sued the FBI and won because they weren't accommodating his needs as a blind person. Then there's a network of people to whom you can ask questions. And they were a network for information for me in the National Federation of the Blind. But even more than that, this was a group of people that gave me some really important experiences.
Purple mic is dead.
A friend of mine is named Rosa Offman. She's the president of the National Federation of the Blind of America.
It's charging.
She's a federal employee and recently testified before Congress. She didn't learn Braille until she was much older and doesn't really use it at the speed at which she wants to. So she figured out how to use her screen reader to use it like a teleprompter. So she had her screen reader in one ear, she had bumped up the font size on her laptop so it read fewer words per line, and she went through and gave a speech that way. And that allowed her to have prepared testimony before Congress. And if Rosa can do that, as somebody who learned Braille later in life, then surely there are a lot of things that we can all learn to do. Because we are in this organization of blind people, not only do we get to access local resources, we also get to help one another. I'll close with this. We had the chance to host the World Blind Union several years back in Orlando. And as the host organization, we said, well, we're going to have a lot of people who are going to need assistance finding things. And this group was used to, when they would travel, there would be a whole group of sighted folks that would provide, guidance. And that's a nice thing to do, but we said, can we do it differently? And so we deployed several hundred of our blind members to help these blind folks from around the world. And what they came to experience was maybe they didn't need guidance, they just needed access to somebody saying, exhibit all this way. Oh, great, I can follow your voice, right? And if I did need to take your arm, I took the arm of another blind person. Several of them didn't realize all their guides were blind until later on in the week. Because we give each other that experience, we help each other at the job level, and we help prepare one another to think 5 years ahead, even when that's just a little bit scary. So wherever you live, the National Federation of the Blind, fill in the blank of your state, love to get you connected with them, and with a community of folks who can encourage and empower you. Thanks.